Hello, welcome to Emotional Badass, where Moxie meets mindful. I'm your host, life coach and psychotherapist, Nikki Eisenhower. And on today's episode, I am interviewing Lindsey Mathews, doctor of chiropractic, birth doula, NLP practitioner, strength and conditioning coach, and creator of the movement Birthfit. Hi, Lindsey.
You nailed it.
Yeah, that's who you are. Isn't it nice to kind of hear somebody announce you?
Yeah, it's like, wow. Thank you very much. Thank you for saying all that, and thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being on.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, this is an interesting match because I am not a mother and I have chosen not to have children in this world. And I think maybe that's a great place for us to start because I do think there's a weird energy in the world. Like there are women who have babies and there are women who don't. And there's kind of an us against them. And I think there's such an opportunity for us to be an ally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny because most people assume I have children because I'm the founder and CEO of this company called Birthfit, but I actually don't have kids either.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that because I totally assumed that. Okay, that's great. I'm glad we're naming this.
Yeah. So same page there for sure. But yeah, it's pretty wild. I like to say Birthfit for sure is my baby. And then we'll see what happens in chapters later on in life. But for now, this is my baby for sure.
Oh, that's so funny to hear you say that because I really thought I was going to be a mother for all the years of my life. And then a few years ago, it just was always swimming upstream and just really didn't feel right each time I kind of thought I'd get into that space of becoming a mother. And then I gave birth to the podcast. And this is...
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah. And it's a real way for me to channel because I'm very maternal. And so it's a way for me to really channel my love and my maternal qualities and my feminine energy into really giving birth to all the different things that we give birth to in this world other than babies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even though babies are fabulous.
Babies are fabulous. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
They are. So tell me, let's tell our listeners what Birthfit is and how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you kind of the elevator speech and then we can dive in wherever we want. But Birthfit is a movement. It is a style. It is an approach to birth specifically, like the birth process, parenthood, the parenthood transition, adoption even. And it's a movement and education-based company that lives online and in-person classes. So there's kind of two routes for somebody to be involved in Birthfit. And one could be this Birthfit leader route in which they come to us, they get trained, and then they start teaching the classes in their communities. And then the other route is, if you're on the financial side, it's the direct-to-consumer route, meaning the customer, wherever they are, can buy one of our programs online and move and train in basically a intentional experience, sustainable way throughout their pregnancy and then rehab postpartum. So our niche covers, we like to say 3 months prior to conception and then 12 months postpartum. And it started for me as a blog, which is wild to think about even like now it still feels very new, but it also feels like so long ago. It started as a blog and it was around 2011, 2012. And I was just writing about my experiences. And I'm sure many of your listeners and people that tune into this podcast can relate. I grew up very standard American, as I like to say, where I didn't see birth, but I didn't see breastfeeding and I didn't see sisterhood. And I just, the only thing I saw, which is amazing, is a mom that was an entrepreneur and that fought to stay in the workforce, which I like to say I got a blend of the masculine and the feminine energies, whereas my mom was striving so hard to, cultivate that masculine energy and stay in the workforce. But it started for me as a blog, and I was just in awe of the experiences that I was getting to observe and be a part of. And I was a doula, I was a chiropractor, and a strength and conditioning coach. And then I'm also a trained NLP practitioner, so that kind of mixes in there. But I was having the opportunity just to be a part of so many people's journeys. And, I observe birth or a chiropractic session or a training session. And that's where all the opinions were born. But mainly it was, I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this information was out there? Or, why didn't anybody tell this woman that came to me that she had options? And, I wasn't thinking about kids at that time. I still feel like 16 years old and thinking, when am I going to have kids? Like, is that a thing? So I wasn't even thinking along those lines, but more along the lines of like, what the heck? Like, this information was hidden from me as a woman and as somebody that could possibly want kids one day. I started writing my opinion, and then people wanted to be a part of it. I was getting messages about the blogs I was writing and the classes I was teaching. And out of that, the Birthfit leaders were born. And they used to be called regional directors, but we call them leaders now. And they would take the classes that I was teaching in Los Angeles, California, and use the curriculum in their communities and share the education that, we all kind of created as a community. The education has definitely evolved, and we have the I like to say we have the upper hand in that we get to talk to each other, and we don't really wait for science or research or something to say, hey, this is working. Like, we have groups in which women share their experiences with conception or birth or anything in the postpartum period, and sharing their stories, the realness, the unfiltered versions of everything. We have a pretty amazing community, and I like to tell people it's just Birthfit is raw, real information, and it's up to you. What you do with it. It's your choice.
We're very parallel. We're very parallel in this area because it's part. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, other than me. That anecdotal evidence is so important and powerful. Like, if I do emotional healing in my work, and you're talking about women having babies, I mean, we've been dealing with these things since the beginning of time. We have a lot of our own evidence. And when we just share our stories, that's valuable. That's not invaluable just because we haven't figured out how to study that in a lab.
Right. Because it doesn't fit the certain lab criteria. It's so powerful. And I think, I could go off on a ton of tangents, but right now, I think a lot of stuff coming to light or being brought to the surface. And amongst some of those things is like that our medical history has been predominantly written by males and, very conservative white Christian males or Catholic males, religious males. And, that there's no part of the woman's lens in any of like the medical history of America. So I think we're in an interesting space of, America's a baby in the grand scheme of things. And like you said, we've been doing this forever. So it's pretty amazing that even now, still some of the stories and the just the wisdom and I like the ancestral medicine still gets passed on. It's so amazing that stuff like that isn't lost. And I think it will hopefully be at a space to where we can embrace the two, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, grandma's medicine, environment, everything. But I think, we're kind of like shedding the light on things right now in the medical schooling system.
Yeah. It's such important work. What I've found over the years being a counselor and a coach is that when women are deciding to have a child or they become pregnant, we really know very little. Like our high school educations, even our college educations. I've got a master's degree. None of that education was about birth or really in-depth getting to know my body as a woman.
No, not at all.
So as I've learned some of these things, because I really, Ina May is someone that I have had a full-on like girl crush on. As weird as that is for me to say, Ina May is sort of the midwifery mother like in our country, right?
Totally.
So I've read all of her books, and I really thought I would go like a midwifery route like at one point in my life. And when I've shared that information, like, your body is this amazing vessel that is meant to carry this child and deliver it. There's nothing medically wrong with you. You aren't sick.
Absolutely.
Like, this is exactly what is supposed to happen and has been happening since the beginning of time. And guess what? Newsflash, you get to be an empowered part of that process.
Totally. And just on that sentence alone, whenever like I was thinking of that image flash of the birth I was at last night, it's just when a mom and like the couple and whoever's there, like when she believes in herself and the people around her are like supporting her, they believe in her probably more than she may believe in herself in some moments there. But it's a really powerful experience, and I think that kind of shakes all those humans in that room. And I think it just, that kind of birth experience has ripple effects down the line. But to go off what you were saying about not learning about things in school. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Like, I went to chiropractic school, and I came out, and I was like, okay, so I want to specialize in pregnancy and postpartum. So what do I do? And the only thing available was this diplomat program, which is amazing. It's put on by the ICPA. It's pregnancy and pediatrics, but there was only one weekend for pregnancy.
Wow.
I was like, wait, yeah. So
wow, that's a 9-month process already.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I talked to my friends. Like, I had friends that were in medical school, and I had other friends that were in PT school. And, it's very similar across the board. Like, we were just not educated in the power of the birthing body. And, this was back in 2009, so 10 years ago, only 10 years ago, but also, 10 years ago, I was doing anything like kind of underground seminar I could do, just because I realized that I didn't learn it in the standard school system. And you're right, like, I didn't learn about my period. I just learned not to have sex because it was not the Christian thing to do. There was no real conversation about
other than you will feel shame, so don't do this. That was about the extent.
Yeah, just pouring on the shame. Yeah. So it's wild. And I recently read somewhere, and I wish I could remember where, but speaking of like female anatomy and, the textbooks and stuff, the clitoris, which is part of female anatomy, wasn't even included in textbooks until like the 1980s or 90s.
Whoa, so, really?
Yeah. Oh. So just think about like my parents' generation, they for sure do not know where the clitoris is. So of course it's foreign. Yeah.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, so we got to change the textbooks. We got to change the way people are taught. Maybe take the religion conversation out of it just a little bit more, because like we just said, there's so much shame kind of mixed in, intertwined with the initial sex conversations for young adults.
Well, and I think about how that aligns with a healthcare education, because you went through chiropractic school, and an ex of mine I was with went through chiropractic school. So I sort of witnessed that process.
Yeah.
And
bless you.
yes, thank you. But the thing that struck me about my own healthcare as a counselor education was how much of it was taught, because I don't think the general public knows this, that how much of your education when you're in healthcare is about being the professional. And I think back, like you were saying, about kind of how all of our healthcare was created by these sort of Christian-based white guys in medical codes that really came from a perspective of, I am higher than you, I am different than you, I am the authority figure. You are not like me. You are here to listen to me, and I am the authority. You are not. You don't know what's going on. And that's really has been taught to healthcare professionals, because they teach you that so that you can sort of have a confidence. But when that confidence is taken to an authority, that's so disempowering to the patient or to the client that's in front of you. So I think people like me and people like you are out there maybe changing that for healthcare, that, hey, I'm not the authority figure. I am the co-collaborator with you. You know about your body.
Yeah, you know about your body better than anybody. And when you start getting those mixed signals, I just had a client, she's pregnant and she went to her OB-GYN, and she felt really just like pressured into getting the flu vaccine. And she went 2 visits in a row. That she was like, I'm going to make my husband get it first and then see how he does. And he got sick. So she came back and told I don't think the doc, I don't think this is a good idea for me. But, she grew up very much like that. And she was just like, I'm so surprised that they just didn't listen to me the first time when I said, no, I don't think this is a good idea for me, And that's just an example. It can happen with anything. But it's, I think we're realizing that when we're engaging with a healthcare professional and they almost take the power away from us, rather than, hey, what do you feel in your body? What do you think that's saying to you? Or, okay, I think once a week for 6 weeks would be great to see you. How do you feel about that? When they're basically, like you said, the authoritative figure telling you what to do, then there's really no room for you to grow as a human, much less heal,
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that empowerment really, it flows. There's such a butterfly effect. Like my very best girlfriend, when she had her first baby, she brought out the birthing chair. And all of the medical students and residents that were in the hospital or in the birthing center, they all came to watch because they had never seen a woman use the birthing stool. This is something that has been used for, I don't know how long, but I'm thinking over a century. And
they probably had prettier stools.
So those of us that I think are brave enough to empower ourselves and to step up and go, yeah, I'm doing it a little differently, even if all of y'all give me funny looks, I'm going to do it anyway. Then we really empower and spread that knowledge, because those medical students, those residents now get to go on and take that forward. They were all amazed. Absolutely. And that was from her strength of being able to trust herself and align with health practitioners that encouraged her to be empowered and to act from that space.
Yeah, whenever I see that, I always want to just like rewind the tape on that person's life and be like, how did you get here? What gave you the confidence? What gave you the groundedness? Like to show these people, like she had to be so sure of herself, in that instant.
Yes.
And just so much trust in herself. And that's so powerful. So yeah, I always want to what were all the little tidbits that got you here?
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, what goes, like I was listening to some of your stuff before our interview, and I really love the conversations you have and the healing and talk around healing and the what did you call it? The part, which is a really great analogy. And sometimes I'll use like the different rooms in a house analogy. But you were reminding me of when couples come to me, and I really like working with couples, like as soon as I can, to be their doula and to start just getting to know them early on. And one of the things they always ask me is, okay, what do we need for birth? And I said, well, you don't really need anything. I mean, we could show up tomorrow and it'll be great. But like you need to you need to clean up the house, basically. And like my metaphor is like cleaning up the rooms of the house, which is very much, like you're saying with the parts and stuff. And, I think having kids or being called to like carry kids or be a parent or whatever, it's like hyper speed of forcing people to sort their shit out, whether they like it or not. And I wish everybody could go through that. Like you go through it, with the podcast, and I think I've gone through it to get to this business. But I think you're onto it whenever, like, in what you're saying with the parts and stuff. And that's the number one piece of advice that I would give people, is whether you're thinking about having kids or not, is clean up the house. Sort all the stuff out, all the crevices. So that you know who you are and who you are in this world and what your values and priorities are. And then you can go and make decisions from there, from that empowered state. But it's an easy world to get lost in.
It is. Well, and I think that's part of the education that we miss, is that we're not having enough like active, direct messaging all throughout our lives from elementary school on up that, hey, one of the best things you can do for yourself and any people that you bring into the world is figure yourself out first. That is your number one investment. Is you. And it's so crazy to me. I haven't released it yet, but I just recorded an episode on my student loan situation and experience.
Oh my God.
I know. It's one of my scariest episodes. I haven't released it yet. Because that's something that we don't talk about. And so we have people investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in education, but then we don't really know how to invest in ourselves. And so there's a lot that's so skewed out there in terms of what we're telling people is really important. And there is no more important thing to me than figuring yourself out, whatever that means to you, and cleaning up all of those rooms of your house. And even knowing that that's our job.
Yeah, it's part of the journey, I think, for sure. Oh, the student loan. Wow, you got me thinking there. Because people are not afraid to throw away money or put money into an education or a house, but God forbid you do some work on what triggers them or what, grief or anything that they're dealing with.
Or what their blocks are, what their addictive tendencies are that get in the way of living the life that they want. Yeah, these are all investments in ourselves. So I want to ask you and give you an opportunity to share some of your programs, because I love that you touch on sort of what I might call like the lifespan of a pregnancy, sort of from idea, like you said, 3 months before conceiving, all the way through to a year postpartum. Because, one of the things that I keep seeing as a feminist in heart and spirit, I keep seeing moms and new moms who have 1 or 2 babies who are so tired and so depleted, who keep thinking that they are supposed to be doing everything. I think it's an unfortunate consequence to feminism, that we've been told we can do anything, which a lot of us take as we should do everything.
Yeah.
So I wind up supporting a lot of moms like through that period of being pregnant and then being a new mom, or bringing the second child in and managing the first child. So talk to me about your programs and what you offer and how you meet women right where they are.
Yes. So, okay, there's a number of different ways, and I'll start with like the most accessible way to get involved with Birthfit. And that would be just to listen to the podcast. We have a podcast. There's birth stories, there's birth professionals, experts, like pelvic floor PTs, all kinds of stuff on the podcast. So you can really find, an episode for any type of question you have. And then there's the blog, and both of those are free information. So if you're somebody that's just kind of like inquiring, not sure where to start, those are all good places. And then we have our Birthfit, what I call signature series. And these are classes or workshops that each of the Birthfit leader teaches. And we have the Birthfit prenatal series, which is our version of birth education. And in this class, it's basically a weekend intensive, or we can divide it over 4 weeks. But it's an intensive amount of information as well. So we start with basically birth history in America, and then land on where we're at in America, like with current stats. And, that bit alone, I think, kind of opens people's eyes up to things. Like, for one, we spend close to $98 billion in America, and we have one of the most, if not the worst, infant and maternal mortality rates out of industrialized countries. We also have a 33% cesarean rate, and the World Health Organization recommends that a country, for the health of their species or their culture and society, be at 10 to 15%. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have some not so amazing stats when we're spending a ton of money, and that's basically where we're at. We also, if we're looking at the grand scheme of things in our country, the health of our population overall is just really not healthy. Chronic disease, not moving, overweight.
It's an epidemic. It's out of control.
Yeah, out of control, depressed. So there's that, and we kind of paint the picture for people in this class, and then we introduce what Birthfit is, some movement that they can take away with them and practice daily throughout their pregnancy, some breathing and kind of meditation tips. We also get into discovering what your desires are around birth, and then what your values are as a couple. And then we go through this, we call it the longest birth preference sheet ever, but it's basically a birth plan. Like, I say birth plan because most people have that familiar language, but we call it a birth preference worksheet.
I like that.
And so it's 9 pages, honestly, and we go through it, and they sit home with it for homework and come back with it. And then from this, everybody in this class builds their own preference sheet. And it's a 1-page sheet with maybe 10 to 12 bullet points. So we ask them to pick what matters most to them out of this worksheet. And then we're going to translate that to just a 1-page thing you type up, and you're going to give to your midwife or your OB-GYN and your doula or whoever. So we kind of know what the priorities are for the person, and they do too. Like, for instance, on this sheet would be, maybe for one couple, they really have discovered that they value movement. So they know when they get to the hospital, if they're doing a birth at the hospital, that they really need to ask right away for the cordless monitor or intermittent monitoring for fetal heart rate. If you weren't taking a birth education class, much less this one, like, why else would you know to ask for that information and be an advocate for yourself and what you need? Those kind of things are born out of that birth preference worksheet. And then we do some scenarios in this class, and we finish with a postpartum plan worksheet, which is always like, people are like, wait, what? We're talking postpartum? Like, yes, the baby, like the birth, yes, is the finish line. But there's also like this other 18-year marathon you got to run after that. So that's on the other side.
Well, and that to me sounds like a preventative postpartum attempt.
Yeah. Oh my God. Whenever we, this postpartum plan, and it's simple. Like, I could tell you right now, plan online in for 30 days. Have somebody that is like your point person, especially if you have another kid, have somebody that's the point person for them, and then making sure you have food, chores are done, like it doesn't smell, trash is taken out, that sort of thing. Just to like take care of yourself. You know who the point person is. You know you have a person that you call if like you're feeling down, out, bluesy, not grounded, whatever. But you have a person that you can call that will be an ear to listen to, not somebody that's going to give you advice when you're not needing advice. You just want to be heard or to vent or that sort of thing. So yeah, taking those kind of preventative measures postpartum, I think can go a long, long way.
And maybe the easiest part to overlook, like because the new baby is there and that's going to get all of your attention. And so, yeah, I think this really contributes to postpartum depression, is just not having kind of that space and time tended to. You know, I'm getting excited hearing you talk.
Oh my God.
Because you're talking about strong, empowered women allowing themselves to be helped. And this is part of why I teach boundaries, because this requires boundaries. So many of us will not invite help because a lot of the help that we've gotten in our lives has not been very helpful. It's been more of a pain in the ass than helpful. And so a lot of us who are empowered and strong, we figure out I can do it better on my own. And so we're very self-helping in that way. And that's great. And that's wonderful. But we cannot do this life without getting help. And we have to have boundaries to be able to invite the help in, to be able to know how to say, no, that's not very helpful. No, thank you. I don't want that.
Right. Or no, I don't even like that kind of food. Can you make something else?
Yes.
You know?
Thank you for the effort, but no, thank you. Yes. Being able to advocate for yourself really takes a certain awareness and acceptance and working through of boundaries.
Yeah, and I think boundaries is definitely a word that, you know, I didn't even think about until you pulled it up, but it's a word that gets thrown around a lot for sure. But yeah, the postpartum period, you have to know basically where your yellow line boundary is, your red line boundary is, and when to say, like, especially as a partner too, you know, like, hey, I just need an hour for myself. And then I can come back and be 100% for us, for this family. Yes.
Yes, that's why boundaries are so important. Are huge. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So totally derailed, but that's all in the birth education class, which is, you know, I said earlier, like this raw information, this real information, and as you said, the prevention on the postpartum side of things. Like I don't know how to measure that, or if there even is a way to measure that, but.
I don't think you
depression,
can.
Postpartum.
Yeah, I don't think you can measure
anxiety,
prevention. I think that's the problem kind of in proving the kind of work that we both do is you can't prove what doesn't happen, what depression doesn't happen, what anxiety doesn't happen. You can't measure that.
No, but I do know, and like probably you do and others, that it's at like an all-time high right now. And it's 1 in 3 women will experience some sort of symptoms of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, or somewhere along the spectrum of that. And yeah, it's like we were talking about. They're usually women that have been very successful, and this is just in my experience. They've been very successful because they've had to be independent, they've had to survive, and now all of a sudden they're isolated and they don't know how to ask for help because they've done everything on their own. And we're at this weird space in our world where community it's not a default any longer. You know, like back years ago, community was built and it was almost like an automatic, whether it was church or the village you lived in or whatever, there were always people around. But you take a mom that's, you know, just birthed in a big city and she probably doesn't live near any relative. So she has to figure out, okay, I have to ask for help and I also have to pay for help because a lot of the stuff that I need is not covered by insurance. So even just budgeting for that and kind of an awareness around it ahead of time, I think will go a long way. Yeah, no way of measuring.
Well, and you're naming something that I call like soft place to fall. Like it's to me that we've lost
Mm,
community, and
yeah.
in the past there were just some safe places to fall, whether that was church
Yeah.
or friend groups or even like book clubs, PTA
Yes.
meetings, whatever it was. There was just more of a sense of live and in person in your real life community.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have to cultivate
I
that.
think,
Now we have to really go after it and make it happen. It's not just there in the background that we can fall into when we need to. We have to actually put energy into cultivating and having it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, honestly, I think that's what made Birthfit kind of take off is our first class was the postpartum series, which, is similar to the prenatal series in that it can be offered 4 weeks, but it's a 4-week class and it meets twice a week. And we have topics that are for discussion, and then we have proper rehab and movement and breathing for that day. And so I think without even realizing what we were doing, we were bringing the community back and cultivating that community. And, forget about whatever we programmed for rehab, because we could have just gone through and had the discussion topics. And I think, 50 to 90% of the healing still would have taken place for these women. So I think the community is, it's magic, and there's no way around it except just gathering in the physical space.
Yeah, much needed. Thank you for putting that work out into the world. I'm so happy. I want to give Kat a shout out, because Kat, my assistant, I believe your admin too, is who connected us. She said we just needed to meet.
Oh, I love it. Kat's pretty special. She makes the world go around.
She does make the world go around. Yes, absolutely. So thanks, Kat. Kat's business, just to give her a shout out, is Chartered Creative Services. Find her if you need a cat in your life. She's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to
amazing.
Yeah, I want to thank you for sharing your time with me today. Is there anything else that you want to share with this emotional badass audience about what you do or what you offer or who you are in the world?
No, I think what you're doing is really powerful, and I think, all humans, whether they're birthing or not, would benefit from listening to the topics on your podcast. So I think
thank you.
It's some powerful stuff, and you do it in nice little bite-sized pieces. But yeah, I would just say, if you are approaching the parenthood transition, to approach it with curiosity and love. And when you start feeling overwhelmed or rough, just take a step back and breathe. And know that you don't have to make a decision about anything. I always tell people, just breathe, take a step, take a moment, pray, do whatever you got to do, and then make a decision. So yeah, that's what I would leave everybody with.
I love that. That's fantastic advice. If we could all just walk through the world with a little bit more of that in our pocket, day in and day out, there'd be a huge ripple effect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I just want to say again, this is Dr. Lindsey Mathews from Birthfit. And is it birthfit.com? Do I have that right?
Yeah, nailed it.
Go find her at birthfit.com. She has practitioners and leaders all over the world, not just all over the United States, but all over the world. So you have a good chance wherever you are to find her and to find her work and to connect. And just like my work, her stuff is online too. So there are multiple ways to reach out and connect with Lindsey. I'm an emotional badass. Lindsey is an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass. And together we are where Moxie meets mindful. Thank you. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.